All right, joining me now, Gerri Willis, Fox Business correspondent, and John Carney, economics and finance editor at Breitbart News and co-author of the daily Breitbart Business Digest. Gerri, I know you're a tough customer on the tariffs, okay? And you like very clear instruction. Here's what's happening. You saw Caroline Leavitt there. She said, look, China's got to come to the table. You've also heard President Trump seeming to soften a little bit. I think markets reflected some of that back and forth. What do you make of that?
It's not clear. I'm still trying to figure out who's saying what. It sounds like, I mean, if you're reading the tea leaves, I would guess there's a softening going on, but they don't want to broadcast it too much. As always, the administration, I think, is negotiating in public, right? It's right out there. They're trying to influence people with what they're saying. So figuring out where they want to end up is difficult. But I have to tell you, these markets are trying to see through all of that. Today, you saw the big rally.
John, you know, you've written some of the most interesting stuff to me on kind of the case for what Trump is doing on tariffs. And you have this phrase that I really like, the political economy of strength, okay? You look at what's happening maybe the last day or two, and to Gerri's point, it starts to look like maybe a little pullback, a little bit of a softening. Is that how you read it? And do you think that's the right move, given how you view these tariffs?
So I don't think it's a softening. I think what Donald Trump has been very clear about for a long time is that the tariffs are there to try to change the world trading system. We are remaking the world economic system. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, said today, he harkened back to Bretton Woods when the U.S. first started rebuilding the world economic system. We're doing that again now. It's not going to be as extensive as Bretton Woods. The world isn't suffering from post-World War II, but it is a remake of the world. And so what Donald Trump is saying is, look, the 145% tariff on China isn't meant to be a forever tariff. It's meant to get China to change. The world knows China needs to change. We're trying to help them change. If China changes, the tariffs can come down.
So the world knows that China needs to change. We're trying to help China change. There's one little missing piece in that, which is, does China want to change? You know, you're looking at the headlines, and this is very opaque, but are you getting a sense that, Gerri, that there's maybe some kind of, you know, Trump used the word nice, meeting of the minds here around where it goes?
Fingers crossed. Okay. You know, I mean, I'm listening to you, John, and I hear what you're saying. And it's a great idea that Trump wants to change everything. And I actually agree kind of fundamentally with the idea, because I think it's gotten completely out of control what China's doing. But Trump doesn't exist in a vacuum. And we saw that with the bond market and the stock market saying, no, you are going too far. And he had to pull back. I think this is a negotiation, and his negotiating partners are not just the countries. It's not just China, the EU, et cetera. It's also the markets.
I think that the big danger here, and I'll say this is a difference between what I write and where the Trump administration is. They are much more optimistic about the opportunity there is to reform China. I actually am very skeptical. I think that China is going to resist more than they think. But look, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Donald Trump all think that they can really make a difference. And I hope that they are right, but I'm not sure. Look, Xi Jinping is really, he's a survivor. He has gotten to where he is, not by giving in to people. Yeah. And he looks down the road and says, Donald Trump's going to be out in a few years. Maybe I can last through that.
Communists are not famous for accommodating people well. I think that's a good observation. Other things you're skeptical about, John Carney. Jerome Powell, okay, there's been a brouhaha about the Fed the last few days. President Trump had some tough words for Jerome Powell, let's put it that way. Lately, he's kind of backed off that, especially saying, and I think this is where the markets came in, saying, look, I'm not looking to fire him now, but he does want to see the Fed lower interest rates. Is that going to happen? Does he have any persuasive ability, let's put it that way, with not just the Fed, not just Jerome Powell, but all of the folks who go into the monetary policy making, decision making there?
That's right. One of the things I've been saying is Donald Trump's not going to try to remove Jerome Powell, because removing Jerome Powell, he's just one of 12 votes on the Federal Open Market Committee. It doesn't really get you what Trump wants, which is a more accommodative, easing monetary policy. So he's not going to do it. He's not going to try to, remove all 12 or remove all 7 of the governors. Just trying to replace them, get them through the Senate would be impossible. Jerome Powell's out of there in a year, so it doesn't really make sense to do that.
Well, let me just add in, because your excellent Breitbart column, I thought, was spot on. And what's so interesting about that is that in the media and in the markets, we look at all these Fed governors and the voting members, and we see big differences between them. But in reality, they're pretty darn close together. They're old-fashioned economists. They are not fans, I don't think, of what Trump is trying to do. They don't like this idea of imposing high tariffs. So if you take out Powell, you just get another one of the same thing, in my view. Like, the kid who becomes a Fed governor is not the one with the BMX bike. He's not the guy.
Are there kids out there in America with BMX bikes dreaming of being a Fed governor? I've never had that thought before.
But I will say Trump is going to win this, and the market thinks he does. When the Fed announced what their plans were, their latest summary of economic projections had them cutting interest rates 2 times this year. The market gives that about a 7% probability. It thinks that the Fed is going to cut 4 times this year.
Yeah.
So Trump is getting all the flack, but I bet by the end of the year, we're going to see that Trump actually won and that the Fed actually eases much more. The only way that doesn't happen is if the economy actually ends up doing a lot better than anybody thinks it's going to. Trump has a point. He's agreeing with actually some of his critics that the economy may need a boost from monetary easing. That's what he's saying.
So you're in favor of Trump's position on that?
That's what Trump thinks. My position is I'm still a little worried about inflation. I'm actually more on the Powell side of this in that we've been dealing with very high inflation because of what Biden did and what Powell did during the Biden years. I'm not sure we're through that. If the Fed eases too early, we could get a revival of inflation. Trump says that's not going to happen because we're deregulating, because we have a lot of energy, but I'm still a bit worried about it.
We're going to get a cut at the next meeting, Gerri, do you think? Is there any world in which the Fed does that?
I don't know. I mean, I really can't answer that. And if I could answer that question, I would be on my own private.
You would still come and be on this show. Even
with you anytime, Brian. But I just want to say, look, this isn't as easy as it sounds. It's hard to predict because these people are unpredictable. Trump is something we've thrown into the mix that you never know how it's going to work out.
If we get a disastrous jobs report next week, next Friday, we get the April jobs report.
Yeah.
That's ahead of the Fed meeting. If that came out and it was, showing as bad as the stock market has been, predicting things are going to go, if that was a disaster, then I think the Fed could ease. I don't think it'll be a disaster, and I don't think there's really any chance.
It's been strong. We've seen great jobs numbers.
We've had some without the uplift of federal government hiring, by the way, which has been
and great housing numbers today. All the hard numbers are good for the economy.
I saw you had an article on that as well. Hey, real quick, I want to get your thoughts on Elon Musk. Okay, he's saying, look, I'm going to be migrating away from the Doge, going back to the Tesla, because I think the implication, I think Tesla needs his help a little bit. Yeah. Let's flash back to when he talked with our own Larry Kudlow just a couple months ago.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah, I mean.
But there's no turning back, you're saying. You're going to go another year?
Yeah, I think so.
That sigh probably said it all there.
Right.
Is this the turning back?
Well, look, I didn't think this was ever a job he was signing on to for the long term. It was always a short-term gig. He was going to come out with a report midsummer. We were going to see that. So I'm not surprised by this. And holy cow, Tesla needs a little help at this point. And they need the CEO back in the driver's seat.
Markets like the sign of help. John, less thought on this one.
So I think Elon has actually got his guys in place. Yeah. He doesn't need to stay there 7 days a week. He's probably going to be doing Tesla 5 days a week. And then the federal government 2 days a week. That guy doesn't rest. He doesn't take weekends off.
Amazing.
So even when he steps back, he's still going to be there. He'll be there more often than congressmen are in Washington.
Well, that is not a high bar to jump over there. Yeah. John Carney, Gerri Willis, great stuff. Thanks for being here, guys. Good to see you.